The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Let's be frank. A dangerous movement, undetected by many, but real, is now challenging and eroding a great tradition of religious freedom. There can be no doubt. It's no little matter. It must be confronted intellectually and politically and defeated. This past election, and much that has flowed from it, gives us a rare opportunity to arrest these trends and to confront them. Such a reversal will not just be done with electoral victories, however, but by intellectual victories.
The irony of an individual who speaks and reads like a first grader, speaking of intellectual victories. But I digress. That is the voice of none other than Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General of the United States, also known as the Keebler-elf Klansman, as he begins to outline this new committee, this new task force that is charged with protecting the religious liberties and freedoms of religious organizations across the country. This task force is charged with carrying out the guidelines that were issued in the executive order from last October. Those guidelines stated that the government could not punish anyone for acting in accordance with one's religious beliefs. And, there's so much irony wrapped in this in this committee, in this task force. I keep calling it a committee, but this task force, whatever you want to call it, defending the quote unquote religious liberties of organizations, when at the core of the entire struggle that is happening right now is between religious liberty, yes, but the limitations of their liberty to impose their religious belief on the broader community, the broader body politic here in the United States. Let me reiterate that for simplicity, just to make sure that it's not lost. You have religious people who feel that it is their religious liberty and freedom that they have, rather the religious liberty and freedom to enforce what they believe on the broader society, not just in cultural norms in the sense of the culture wars, but through the force of law. And again, I said it again, making it a little complex. You have some church folks who want to make everyone live by their rules, and they feel like they have the constitutional right to do so. And the irony of this is that when they are not allowed to force their religious beliefs on people, they claim, they purport to have or to be victims. It's the Christian persecution complex that I wrote about, I guess about 2 years ago. It's this idea that now that you cannot be the oppressor, that you are the oppressed. And that rolling back your right to enforce what you believe on the lives of people who don't want to believe them does not constitute persecution, no matter how many tears you cry about it. That's the irony here. And now Jeff Sessions is using the force of law, using the force of the Department of Justice to ensure that religious organizations have the maximum freedom to institute their moral beliefs even onto the lives of people. See, this is where we are in terms of constitutional rights. We're still weeding, not weeding out, but we're still fighting through the nuances of competing rights. But let me save that. I'm going to come back to that because that's the deeper conversation that we're going to have. I want to play more of Jeff Sessions' straw man. Series of straw men that he set up to justify the creation of this task force. Listen in.
We've gotten to the point where courts have held that morality cannot be a basis for law, where ministers are fearful to affirm, as they understand it, Holy Writ from the pulpit, and where one group can actively target religious groups by labeling them hate groups.
straw man after straw man. Courts have ruled that religion, a particular religion, cannot be the basis of law. That's the entire basis or the premise of the separation of church and state. If you can't find a secular or a non-religious justification for your law, then you are violating the separation of church and state. And I say it so matter-of-factly because it is a very simple concept to get, yet you have people who are intentionally trying not to get it. Because underneath this, the broader conversation that we're going to have is about Christian supremacy. Whereas I am a Christian, it's easy to recognize Christian supremacy at play in the United States. It is a part of the unholy trinity of power in the United States of white supremacy, male supremacy, and Christian supremacy. And so we are incomplete in our fight for justice if we cannot recognize Christian supremacy, no matter how Christian I may be. The role that Christianity has played in the oppression of so many marginalized groups throughout history, including the enslavement of black people. I mean, it's patently obvious, and the role that it continues to play in 2018 as a means to justify withholding rights from individuals based on religious dogma and religious doctrine, or just your religious beliefs. That's the role that it's playing now. And this role is critical in maintaining the power structure that wants ultimately to be protected. See, this is ultimately not about religion, at least not for the most powerful people who understand the role that religion plays in society and how that religion can be utilized to maintain power and to increase their wealth, to exploit wealth. Right. You have millions of people across this country who genuinely believe what they believe. But at the top of this entire conversation, just like any other conversation, are the people who probably don't give two damns about Jesus, but they understand the role that Christianity can play in satiating the masses, specifically a particular doctrine in Christianity. That makes it synonymous, that makes capitalism synonymous with faith and makes obedience to power, no matter what power is doing, a core tenet of faith, right? They're powerful people who understand that, who don't care, that they don't care 1 cent about any sense of morality. I mean, look at the president of the United States, who uses Christianity and uses the evangelical movement to obtain power and to protect its power without any regard to any sense of morality by any measure, whether you're atheist or agnostic or you're of another faith. We can all agree that Donald Trump is bereft of any morality, yet he uses and manipulates the faith in order to obtain and maintain his power. He's precisely the type and then you have zealots. Jeff Sessions, the Keebler-elf Klansman, he is a zealot. He is a religious zealot. He believes it, but he believes it in an oppressive way, in a bludgeoning way, in how he can use it to oppress other people that he does not agree with. If he doesn't agree with your lifestyle, you are his enemy. Therefore, he will use the power that he seizes through the use of religion, and he will use that power and use religion as a justification to bludgeon anyone who does not live a life that he approves of according to his interpretation of dogma. True believers and zealots, and then those at the top who understand the power and how to manipulate it. But let's listen to Jeff Sessions a little more.
There can be no doubt that we are stronger as a nation because of the contribution of religious people. Every day across America, they feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, educate our young people, care for the sick. They do so not because the government tells them to, but because they want to. They do these things because of their faith.
You know, if the only reason you're doing something good is because of your faith, are you going to do bad in the absence of your faith. I know that's pretty much like the entry level argument against religion as a basis for morality, but it is really that simple. You do not need religion, a religious text to tell you to do good. But more importantly, what he's arguing here very subtly is that religion can be the basis of charity and can be the safety net. Ultimately, let's just skip all the pretense. He's actually arguing and he's making the argument that religion can be the safety net in the United States, which is to say that the government does not have to spend any money or have any responsibility to the poor because of religious people, because religious people just do so many good things. They can take care of all of the poverty in our society. They can take care of homelessness. They can provide for single mothers or widowed mothers who are taking care of kids on their own. They can do all the good in society that needs to be done. And we don't need the government to spend a dime, leaving the government to be free to use their money on wars. Imperialistic and capitalistic wars. That is the opposite side of his argument. He's saying here that the church folks can do good so that we could free up the taxes of the government to go and do evil. But I want to play a clip from one of my favorite preachers. I know a lot of people don't like this guy, but I still love him. T.D. Jakes. Listen to how he broke apart this argument finally. I wish he had done it so long ago, but he broke apart this argument that it is the responsibility of the church to take care of religious people, rather, to take care of all of the poverty, to take care of all the charity, to take care of all the sick people, to take care of all the hungry individuals. Listen to how he breaks that apart.
I can join in, but why did you take 40% of my check and then tell me that I got to turn around and take another 10% to do what you're not doing? When I gave the 40, I thought you were going to feed somebody. And I think we need to rise up and challenge people. Come on, Bishop. Because I switched on that. I used to say that too until I got a calculator and I added it all up and I started feeding hungry people myself. And if I fed all the hungry people in my zip code, I would have to not pay my staff and they would be hungry too. So at what point, if you're going to take my money, I don't get to give it, you take it before I ever get to see it. I think you can't have 40% of my check and absolve yourself of the responsibility to help feed my community. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I used to buy it. I used to say it, but when I added it up, but when you actually start feeding them, and don't touch health care. Right. When you start talking about a prescription for blood pressure being $400, $600 for one grandmama who's got 5 different conditions in her body, I don't think the church could do it if we all went bankrupt trying.
Exactly.
If you listen very closely at the end of that, you can hear Paula White, who is the quote unquote spiritual advisor for Donald Trump, saying that the government can't do it either.
I don't think the church could do it if we all went bankrupt trying.
Exactly.
And therein lies the competing ideologies in major ideologies in religious circles. I'm glad that T.D. Jakes has finally come over to my persuasion, because the government has the responsibility to do this. And no matter what Jeff Sessions said in that last clip that we just heard, it's not the responsibility of religious people to do this, even though they might want to try to do this. They're not capable of doing it. But that's the argument that he's making. That's the same argument that Paula White makes. That's the same argument that all evangelicals make, that the government has no responsibility to do these things because the church can do these things, when in actuality, the church cannot do these things. And they know the church can't do these things. They just want to free the government up from having any responsibility to do these things so that the government can spend all of its money redistributing wealth to the top 1% in this country by expanding our imperialistic wars abroad and creating new markets for capitalism through force. At the core, at the very the reason I keep saying that phrase is because at the foundation, the very core of the how religious supremacy, Christian supremacy is used in this country is the exploitation of people here domestically and abroad. right? Let's just be sure about that. But back to Jeff Sessions as he explains why this task force is so very necessary.
Faith. I can assure you that people in Washington have no idea the extent to which our religious community is with the American people in times of birth, death, marriage, divorce, and those kind of situations that are so impactful to human beings.
Yeah.
And I believe we need to respect that and affirm it wherever possible.
So he's literally making the case why he believes in Christian supremacy. That's what he's doing. See, the truth of the matter is that there is no threat to Christianity here in the United States. Nobody is trying to stop Christians from being Christian. People are simply trying to stop Christians from forcing them to live by their rules. Right. They're trying to stop Christians from having the control over what is considered normal or moral or traditional. We don't get to define that for other people. Every individual has the right to define the parameters of their life for themselves by whatever guiding book or principles, or by no principles, by no sacred text. They could find it wherever they want to find it. And that type of world, that type of world seems like oppression to them, because it means that Christianity is no longer at the forefront of American society. But it's like with anything else, with white supremacy, white people who feel as though because whiteness is no longer at the forefront of society, or more importantly, when other cultures become even remotely close to being in parity in terms of culture, in terms of opportunity, in terms of the broader society, economically, they feel as though that there is something that they've lost, that they are being oppressed by bringing other races into parity and in equality. You have an entire segment of white people who believe that they're being oppressed. Likewise, men, as soon as they see women getting into the same type of position of authority, positions of notoriety, positions of power, and positions economically. More importantly than all of that, when the tables are finally turned and equality comes in the form of men not being free to harass and assault women in however they want to, and they are being held in society, all of a sudden men feel like they are being oppressed. Similarly, Christianity, when it is no longer the basis of all of our laws in this country, when it's no longer the basis or you don't have the 10 Commandments hanging in the courtrooms, or you don't have prayer being prayed publicly in classrooms or openly in classrooms, and other religions are given the same opportunity that Christianity is given, then of course Christians are going to feel as though they are oppressed, when in reality, white people, men, and Christians are not being oppressed. They are just now no longer being allowed to oppress other groups. It's not complicated. They know it's not complicated. They know what the real solution is. They know what equality looks like. They just don't want to relinquish that amount of control and power over the lives and destinies of so many people. And when they are no longer free to be the oppressor, then they now feel as though they are oppressed. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show for more.